Runways will remain closed for the next few days as investigators look into the cause of this crash. But dramatic videos posted online show passengers evacuating as firefighters were dousing the plane. But you must note that this incident comes less than 3 weeks after an American Airlines plane collided mid-air with a US Army Black Hawk helicopter while on approach to Washington, D.C.'s Reagan National Airport. Well, investigators are currently looking at what caused this dramatic incident, but as visuals show, at least 17 people were injured after a plane crash at Canada's Toronto Pearson International Airport. 2 runways have since then been closed, but the Delta Airlines flight had 80 people on board from Minneapolis, and it ended upside down on the runway in Canada. My colleague Maha Siddiqui has been tracking the finer details for us. She joins us with a live update at the moment. Maha, take us through the circumstances leading up to this dramatic flip on the runway.
So Parmeshwar, at the moment, investigations are underway to understand what exactly happened. But some initial reports are suggesting that snowy conditions as well as crosswinds could have been responsible for this dramatic crash landing that we saw of the Delta aircraft run by Endeavour Airways, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Delta, and that it's headquartered in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. In fact, it is believed that it were these conditions that led to this aircraft first crash landing and then flipping upside down. Though many are saying that it's almost a miracle that there were only injuries and no fatalities as of now, at least that's being reported. There haven't been any reported fatalities. However, we have heard that at least one person was airlifted as well. So there were critical injuries, possibly, is the understanding that we have at the moment. But the conditions, as you can even see in those pictures that are coming in, the runway and around the runway, you can see the snowy conditions. It has snowed pretty badly in Toronto. We know that there was a snowstorm as well a couple of days ago.
Yes.
So the conditions haven't been great. And the dramatic visuals that have also now come out show that the aircraft pretty much crash lands with a billowing smoke that one can see from far away, and then it flips over. The first responders are being appreciated for the quick response to the situation, evacuating all the people out of the aircraft. There were 80 people in it, 76 passengers and 4 crew members. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, has tweeted saying that he is in touch with Delta and that at the moment, the situation at the moment is that all of the passengers and crew members have been evacuated.
Maha, as always, thank you so much for joining us with the latest details. Let's turn our attention to the other big story we're tracking. The United States and Russia have confirmed that their top delegates will meet in Saudi Arabia today to discuss ending the war in Ukraine, in a move that has sparked concern among European leaders left out of the US-led effort. Senior US and Russian officials will hold talks in Riyadh in an effort to lay the groundwork for peace talks. But this confirmation just comes after US President Donald Trump said he and Putin had agreed in a phone call to begin negotiations to end the war, which will hit the 3-year mark later this month. But Trump's push for bilateral talks with Moscow has raised alarm about what place Ukraine and its European allies would have at the negotiating table. Listen in to what Ukraine's president had to say.
Що Україна може дати питання, а що Україна може отримати. Тобто це ж дуже важливо для нас. Ми дійсно дуже зацікавлені в тому, щоб підписати угоду зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. І як першу, і я вже це говорив, і говорив від американських партнерів, у нас є пропозиції від Європи, але всі європейці вони знають, що Сполучені Штати найбільший був стратегічний, є стратегічні партнери, тому ми відкриті для цього. І я президенту Трампу говорив, ми хочемо підписати угоду, але коли ми прийшли до деталей, поки що там немає гарантій безпеки. І гарантії безпеки, вони повинні бути окреслені хоча б якось в цьому меморандумі. Безумовно, ми розуміємо, що це поки що меморандум, а далі буде зливший документ з деталями. Але ми говорили, наприклад, з віце-президентом Джеді Венсом, і він погодився, і я, що краще розробити більш детальний план Договір швидко це зробити і краще підписувати те, що буде дійсно мати результат.
After almost 3 years of mayhem, countless deaths and epical damage to infrastructure, there seems to be some hope towards bringing an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. As US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading a delegation to Saudi Arabia for direct talks with Russian officials on Tuesday to seek an end to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. However, some questions were being raised on the meeting as Ukrainian President Zelensky said Kiev has not been invited for talks. US President Donald Trump addressed those concerns by saying the Ukrainian leader will indeed be a part of the conversation, but did not elaborate on the role he'd play in the talks.
Do you expect Zelensky to be involved in these conversations? What will his role be?
I do. He will be involved, yes.
Zelensky has said he wouldn't accept any negotiations about Ukraine that don't include his country. At the same time, European governments have also demanded a role at the table. In the backdrop of this diplomatic tussle is a devastating war. The true death toll is the subject of intense scrutiny as Russia seldom comments on its battlefield losses. And Ukraine has only recently begun releasing official information on its figures. To add to the mess, civilian deaths in occupied areas of Ukraine are largely unknown. According to figures released by Ukraine, the UN and open source data, the total death toll of Ukrainian and Russian soldiers, as well as Ukrainian civilians, stands at about 1.5 lakh. Trump shocked Washington's European allies recently by calling Russian President Vladimir Putin without consulting them or Kiev beforehand and declaring an immediate start to peace talks. Interestingly, Zelensky is in the UAE right now, but it's not clear whether his visit is linked to the US-Russia talks in neighboring Saudi Arabia. Some top Zelensky advisors have said that there was no possibility of Ukrainian and Russian representatives meeting directly in the immediate future, further creating confusion about the possibility of full-fledged peace talks. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Well, for further clarity, we also have with us Dr. Richard Benkin on the broadcast at the moment. Thank you so much, Dr. Benkin, for joining us on NDTV. Do you see this meeting in Riyadh as a genuine move towards peace, or would you argue that it's a diplomatic maneuver that leaves European allies sidelined?
Well, first, thank you for having me on. I think we knew ever since the election of Donald Trump as president that there was going to be a negotiated end to this war. Exactly the form it would take and how it would come about certainly was unclear. We're starting to see some of the outlines now. However, and so yes, I do believe it will lead to an end to hostilities. And of course, in order for that to happen, Ukraine's going to have to eventually become part of this. President Zelensky has made it clear that Ukraine will not accept any agreements that don't involve Ukraine, and that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes.
However, I want to make a point here. We have to be careful not to miss the really big headline. The really big headline is this. Over the last several years, and in particular over the last 4 years, there has been a growing closeness and cooperation among what we might call an axis of authoritarianism. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, taking almost a solidary stance against democracies such as India and the United States. I think what we're seeing here, beginning with President Trump's call to President Putin, what we're seeing here is a real strategic effort to break up that alliance or at least make it a little less solid.
Right.
So I think that's the real headline here. But as I said, I do believe that this will lead to peace one way or another.
But Dr. Mencken, with Ukraine's president's position not guaranteed in these discussions, what would it actually mean for the future of Ukraine if the US and Russia decide on a peace deal without involving Kyiv?
Well, no, first of all, your sound's kind of coming in and out to me. Well, I believe I heard everything you said. No, as I said, I don't believe that the U.S. and Russia can negotiate an end to the war without involving Ukraine. I mean, after all, whatever decisions they make, we can't expect that Ukraine will automatically just passively accept it after all the blood and treasure that they've lost over these last several years since the Russian invasion began.
Right. As always, Dr. Mencken, thank you so much for joining us. As you've highlighted as well, many analysts are questioning, while Russia deepens its ties with Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern nations as well, could these peace talks be a strategic move by Putin to actually expand Russian influence in the region? That is something that we're looking at as well and investigating, but we will, of course, keep in touch with you for regular updates. With that, let's turn our attention now to what's happening in New Delhi. While extending a rare gesture of hospitality, Prime Minister Modi went to the airport to receive the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who arrived in New Delhi on a two-day visit to India. On what's on his agenda today? Well, my colleague Mohammad Ghazali has joined us with the latest details. He will be meeting President Draupadi Murmu and our Prime Minister today. But for the latest, let's go across to Ghazali. Ghazali, take us through the lowdown and the Emir's schedule.
See, today the Emir of Qatar will meet the Prime Minister, and after that he'll also meet the President of India, Draupadi Murmu. The significance of this visit is huge because you know the kind of influence Qatar wields in the entire West Asia. If you see the geopolitics there, India certainly needs a reliable partner. And in the last 10 to 15 years of this regime, or say in the 12 years of this Prime Minister Modi's tenure, he has visited Qatar. Qatar's Prime Minister is visiting for the second time. And even in the last 7 to 8 months, our own external affairs, Dr. Jaishankar, has visited Qatar thrice, 2 times last year. And this time in January, he was there for the Doha talks. And that is where it was all planned out that on personal invitation of Prime Minister Modi, Qatar's Emir has arrived in India. If you see our energy needs, India is also diversifying its partners in the West Asia. West Asia is in turmoil and India certainly needs a reliable partner. 70% of our energy needs is something for which we import. And out of that, Qatar is one of the leading partners, so it's supplying us with gas and energy needs. And that is why India needs a reliable partner, and hence this visit is very important. Bilateral talks will happen on trade, investment, and energy. Also, we know that Qatar is one of the most influential voices in West Asia, also a member of Gulf Cooperation Council. And India also needs such diplomatic partners who have relations with those nations with whom India has hostile relations as well. If you remember the role of Qatar in achieving ceasefire in Gaza,
yes.
Qatar also has headquarters of Hamas. Qatar also managed to get US to withdraw from Taliban, and that whole entire talks had happened in Qatar as well. So having such a reliable partner on our side certainly benefits India in the long diplomatic run.
Ghazali, as always, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. Well, in other news, reports the United States, via its global aid body USAID, budgeted $21 million for voter turnout in India in 2012 as part of $486 million set aside for a consortium for elections and political processes, have led to a bitter spat, and the BJP and Congress taking sharp jabs at each other. In fact, the Congress's Pawan Khera hit back at the BJP's Amit Malviya, who had attacked the opposition party over the $21 million grant, saying this definitely is external interference in India's electoral process. Who gains from this? Not the ruling party, the BJP for sure. This is what he said. Mr. Khera's response was a pointed reminder that in 2012, when the grant was allegedly made, it was the Congress at the head of the United Progressive Alliance and not the BJP that was in power. But take a look at the finer details.
There are many forces around the world and within India that are inimical to and are opposed to India's rise and transformation. And this expose that US aid was in turn financing to the extent of crores of rupees certain organizations in India to ostensibly for voter turnout, leads to this conclusion that these forces within India that have been creating unrest and undermining India's democracy in India and abroad have been supported and aided by forces outside of India.
The BJP doubling down on the foreign interference claim, targeting the Congress. The controversy started with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency's claim about grants for voter turnout in India via US aid amounting to $21 million, which Musk has now scrapped. The BJP jumped on the claim, declaring it confirms allegations of external interference in Indian elections. The Congress sought to rubbish the charge, with Pawan Kheda pointing out that it was the Congress that was in power during the said period in 2011-12, and why would the party seek foreign interference to weaken its own political chances? Kheda was responding to the BJP's Amit Malviya, who dubbed Musk's claim as proof on external interference in India's electoral process. The Congress also sought an investigation into the claims.
देखिए कोई भी ऐसी बात है तो उसकी छानबीन हो सकती है, उसकी जांच हो सकती है, क्योंकि आज तो 11 साल से नरेंद्र मोदी जी की सरकार है, भाजपा की सरकार है. अगर कोई ऐसी बात हुई तो उसको जांच करके उसको सामने लाए, जनता के सामने लाए, देश के सामने लाए. जब तक उसकी जांच ना हो जाए, जब तक सबूत ना मिल जाए, किसी के ऊपर इस तरह का आरोप लगाना ठीक नहीं है.
The BJP's claims were separately and emphatically refuted by former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi, who headed the poll panel between 2010 and 2012. He said the Dodge claim that funds were used for voter turnout were baseless. He explained that in 2012 there was an MOU with the International Foundation for Electoral Systems to train resources ahead of elections, but there was no mention of any funds. Taking the attack a notch higher, the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council member Sanjeev Sanyal sought to know who in India had received the $21 million funds. He also called the USAID agency the biggest scam in human history. Under fire from the opposition over the Kumbh tragedy and now the Delhi stampede, the ruling BJP has got fresh ammunition to amp up the attack on the opposition with the new Dodge claims, and the fiery face-off is likely to continue in the days to come. An NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, we're back in a moment after this very short break. Do stay tuned.
Kumbh is the flow of the rivers, the direction of the stars, and the memory of the urn full of nectar. I'm here to tell you the story of Kumbh. Watch Mahakumbh Tales with me, Amish Tripathi, only on NDTV.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as top minds from different fields come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, February 18th, 10 a.m. onwards. Tune in only on the NDTV network.
Big Budget Day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmaker. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Welcome back. Well, Iran has said the US and Israeli threats against it were a blatant violation of international law and that they could not do a damn thing to hurt Tehran. These comments came after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem on Sunday and said their countries were determined to thwart Iran's nuclear ambitions and its influence in the Middle East. In other news, South Africa could turn to Russia or Iran to expand its civilian nuclear power capacity. This is what a senior government minister has said. This is a stance that analysts say could deepen a rift with the United States and delay further the renewal of a strategic energy pact, is what Reuters is reporting. South Africa, which operates Africa's only nuclear plant, plans to add 2,500 megawatts of new capacity to tackle the outages that have plagued the economy, as well as to reduce carbon emissions. A quick update from the US now. Well, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is seeking access to troves of sensitive taxpayer data at the IRS, is what local media reports claim. If successful, Elon Musk and his group would have access to millions of tightly controlled files that include taxpayer information in the US, bank records, and other sensitive records. Now, Associated reporting that DOGE is specifically seeking to access the IRS's integrated data retrieval system, which actually enables employees to have instant visual access to certain taxpayer accounts, according to the IRS website. And following an 8-year hiatus, the Champions Trophy returns for its 9th edition this week, with Pakistan hosting its first ICC tournament in nearly 3 decades. You must note, Team India is to play all their games in Dubai, and Afghanistan will make their debut in this Champions Trophy 2025. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka and West Indies are expected to be absent from the ICC event. Well, news and updates continue as always. Thank you so much for investing your time in watching this episode of The World 24/7.
Kumbh is the flow of the rivers, the direction of the stars, and the memory of the urn full of nectar. I'm here to tell you the story of Kumbh. Watch Mahakumbh Tales with me, Amish Tripathi, only on NDTV.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as top minds from different fields come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat. February 18th, 10 a.m. onwards. Tune in only on the NDTV network.
Big budget day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmakers. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Will the war in Ukraine end? Will there be an end to the deaths? Hundreds of thousands have been killed on either side. Donald Trump is clear there must be peace. And the US will not indefinitely arm Ukraine. Does Zelensky have choices? And why are America's NATO partners resisting? Join me, Vishnu Shom, in Munich as the world grapples with one of its biggest problems, the Russia-Ukraine war. Will there finally be peace?
A very good morning. You're watching The Breakfast Show. I'm Divya Vadva. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including a plane that was landing in Toronto and had taken off from Minneapolis, but it flipped on landing. At least 17 people have been injured, out of which 3 are critically injured. We'll get you all the details. First, the headlines.